Welcome to the podcast, Eat Better Food Today. I'm your host, Ken Coonahan, and I'm excited to be sharing insights on why we believe that health and longevity begins with the food, and in this case, with the wine we drink. The goal of this podcast would be to inspire, educate, and enable folks to live a healthier life and do it affordably. My wife and I have been on this journey for over 10 years and continue to work on it every single day. Percent of the profits from this podcast will be put towards child hunger with an initial focus on the poor suburb in America, East Cleveland, Ohio. As a reminder, please be sure to visit my website, Eat Better Food Today, for links to the show, videos, recipes, books, and articles that our guests provide. On this episode, we are grateful to have Fred and Jamie Peterson. Fred and Jamie are the father-son team at Peterson Winery, where they've been producing wine in Dry Creek Valley in Sonoma for the past 30-plus years with old winemaking philosophy and a reverence for sustainable farming. The Peterson approach is to capture the essence of vintage and vineyard, a philosophy they call zero manipulation. We'll explore a little bit more in the show. I discovered Peterson Winery on a business trip to Silicon Valley, a decade, 15 years or so ago. Do you know Barbara Drady? Does that name ring a bell?
Oh, yeah. Well, I've done some of Barbara's wine camps or wine boot camp.
So I actually met her in an airport when we were doing a connecting flight out to San Francisco, and she said, if you're going out there, you really need to go see the Petersons. So that's kind of how I got introduced to you guys. And Jamie, you provided the wine for my daughter's wedding. It was in 2014. That was an Il Granio Sangiovese. I actually saved a bottle, so I got a 2007 bottle of it right here that I haven't opened yet. Saving it for a special occasion. So on our previous episodes, we've talked a lot about food we eat and its effect on health and longevity. Conversations about the blue zones include, conversations about eating, exercise, and they also talk a lot about a glass of wine and how it contributes to long and healthy Centurion lives in the areas that they studied. So in this episode, we'll explore Fred and Jamie's thoughts on their very healthy winemaking philosophy. So welcome, Fred. Welcome, Jamie.
Thank you, Ken.
So before we get into the questions I have, I still believe that a good start to your day begins with a healthy breakfast, and I get very mixed and interesting answers to this question, but I always start out with asking what you had for breakfast this morning, knowing it's still very early where you're at in California.
You want to answer it first?
Sure. Mine, I'll usually have a yogurt of some kind, plain yogurt with honey, and then I don't eat a huge breakfast, but I either do a green smoothie or I have a greens powder that I make a mixed drink. So that's kind of my weekday breakfast is yogurt. Sometimes I do granola and then some greens for weekday breakfast.
Sounds good.
And my go-to breakfast, which I had this morning, is oatmeal with some raisins or some chopped up dried fruit in it. When I get bored having oatmeal too many days in a row, I'll mix it up with some granola that my wife makes. Or on the weekends, we'll live large and have a couple of eggs or French toast. So, so oatmeal, and then I pride myself on, I'm on no prescription medications, but I take a big handful of various supplements and fish oil, and which I have with orange juice, and I got talked into having aloe vera juice, and I'm not really sure what it does, but I put some of that in my orange juice. My philosophy, Ken, is if it's the mind-body interaction. So if you feel like you're doing some good stuff and it's not hurting you, what the hell?
Yeah, I usually do like a healthy shake, like Monday through Friday, and then on the weekends there's a French bakery here in town, and I usually hit the French bakery on Saturdays and kind of enjoy that.
Yeah, it's a little bit of sugar and butter isn't bad. As my wife, who sold her bakery after 36 years, when people would come in looking for no fat, no this, no that. And she'd say, just eat less because the real stuff is better for you than all that fake stuff. So it's what do they say? It's dose. Yeah. Yeah. So any event, I ramble, Ken. But you'll see that in this podcast.
So let's, after that opening there, so I guess give us a little bit of background on how Peterson Winery started 30 years ago. I know, Fred, you were in the Navy, then went to college, and had kind of many side trips on your way to Dry Creek Valley. And I know that you both had a wine experience in Australia at some point along the way as well. So,
I'll give you the shortened version, Ken. The winery, our first vintage was in 1987 on the original vineyard on Lytton Springs Road that's now owned by Ridge Winery. And I moved up to Dry Creek Valley in 1983 from Mount Eden Vineyards, and I was tasked, my main job was to develop vineyards, fine vineyards, one of which was the vineyard on Lytton Springs. But where I live and farm about 40% of our grapes on Bradford Mountain, which is on the western edge of Dry Creek Valley. And that's where I built my house and have lived for the last 40 years. But I tell people my degree from UC Davis is focused on viticulture, but it's all about the wine. And so when I had the opportunity to make a little bit of wine at our original winery, the tiny red barn on Lytton Springs, I took that opportunity in 1987. And it wasn't really, started out not as a business, but as my former partner gave away most of the wine through his investment banking firm. And then slowly I started selling some, and 1995 is when it became my main business, and I left managing the 650 acres of vineyard that I had developed in Mendocino and here in Dry Creek, Russian River, and Alexander Valley. So that's kind of the shortened version. And then Jamie came on board in 2002. So that's kind of our origin. I tell people when I started, and our focus still is expressing the vineyard, not the ego of the winemaker, or certainly, not what the critics want. To us, its place is crucial, and obviously, we as people interpret what nature gives us.
So why? That's
our task. We make, as you know, we make a extremely large number of wines, but that's the fun part. Then we sell them.
So why did you pick Dry Creek Valley? I mean, your location. I mean, why that area to develop your wines?
Well, the short answer is I had an opportunity to move up here to develop vineyards and live. The longer answer is I fell in love with Dry Creek Valley. Well, I first visited Dry Creek very briefly, hitchhiking up to visit a Navy buddy in Fort Bragg, and that would have been 1971. And then when I was at UC Davis, I came over here a couple of times, and I just love the wines. I don't want to sound too romantic, but there's something about it that just really appealed to me. And then when I was introduced to Bill Hambrecht, who bought the property on Bradford Mountain, and he was looking for someone to develop a vineyard, and we discussed it, and I came up and looked at the property and fell doubly in love with both the property and reconnected to Dry Creek. So that's why I'm here, is because I had the opportunity, but it was to end up where I wanted to end up, I guess.
And what can you talk a little bit about the varieties of wine that you grow in that region? You have a lot. You've kind of expanded over the years since I've known you, as far as the number of different varieties.
It's expanded from when we started. It was Cabernet Sauvignon, Zinfandel, He had a few blending varieties like Petit Straw and Carignan that some years would do a little bit, but not regular. And then, as he, I was in the 90s, I was in high school still, planted more vineyards and had access to more fruit and trying new things. Dry Creek Valley has a really varied range of soils and even weather. It's, our vineyard at 1,000-foot elevation in the summer will be above the fog, which is very different, a few hours of sunlight more than the valley floor, which will be in the fog. So the ability to have the different terroirs and areas. Now we make all the Bordeaux varieties, so Merlot, Petit Verdot, Malbec, Cab Franc, and then we have a lot of Rhone varieties as well, Syrah and Grenache. They all do well because the weather here is very favorable, dry, and in the summer, and enough rainfall in the winter, so the vines are happy. And every year is a little different, and some years one variety will shine. So it's the place lends itself to do that, and we enjoy it as well. So it's not always the easiest or the best business decision to have this wide range of bottlings, but it works for us.
Nice. So can you kind of explain a little bit about your zero manipulation philosophy and how it contributes to the wine that you produce?
So zero manipulation started as a T-shirt slogan that our designer came up with because he really liked Z words, or powerful. And he was asking, my dad what he wanted the T-shirt to be, and my dad said, well, I don't want it to be like every other winery. And so he was like, well, you're different because you don't, manipulate the wine. So zero manipulation was coined in the 90s. And it means to us, it's both on the process side. We're not adding enzymes or tannins or acid or mega purple. There's a variety of adjuncts that winemakers can play with to make the wine a certain way, or make up for defaults. And it's not necessarily because those things are evil, but on the flip side, the intent, we don't want the wine to be the same every year or necessarily a certain way. So we let each year be a little bit different, and we're not trying to make it fit in a box, as it were. So, it's grapes, yeast. We do add a little of the sulfur dioxide to keep the wine from spoiling, and put it in mostly older barrels, oak barrels, a little bit of new barrels, and that's it. So, we like to think it's a pretty honest winemaking philosophy and product that we're bottling without chemicals, and that makes sense.
Yeah, to add on a little to what Jamie said, is bigger wineries and certainly the ones where marketing departments decide what wine they want to sell, they work back from how they want the wine to be, and that's what the winemakers have to try to do each year. We as I tell people when they come to the winery, if they like a particular vintage of a particular Peterson wine, I encourage them to buy more, because next year isn't going to be the same. We make it the same, it's from the same grapes, but we let the vintage be part of what we're capturing. If you made it all the same, why bother putting a date on the label? So it's as Jamie said, it's a philosophy. It's kind of a discipline too, because the technology isn't good or evil, but humans being humans, if you have the technology to fall back on, you tend to get a little lazy. And Jamie has to, in the cellar, be very attentive to sanitation, keep the barrels top. I mean, it's, if we, if he making the wine and screws up, it's, you can't undo what you did or didn't do in the cellar. Obviously picking the grapes when we pick is the most crucial decision because you can't change what you start with. But then during the fermentation, aging, etc., every little thing you do is reflected in the bottle, or everything you didn't do is reflected in the bottle.
So how does zero manipulation relate to terroir, and how do you define terroir, and what does that mean? It's I'm not a wine person. I'm drinking it.
Nebulous $64,000 question, isn't it? And everyone has, I'll answer hopefully fairly briefly, and then Jamie could give his take. But to me, a terroir is the attributes in that wine from those grapes, from that place. And when people think of terroir, terroir is the subtleties that come through from the minute differences in the grapes from that particular place, and it's nuance. It's not, and I say that so many of these, and they tend to be more expensive, showy wines, things like oak, alcohol, and tannin, mask terroir. I mean, terroir is the subtleties, and if you don't have subtlety in your wine, your wine will not reflect any true terroir. It'll reflect the winemaker's style, so to speak.
I mean, having said that, California is warmer than a lot of classic European regions, which lends itself to higher sugar levels in the grapes and higher alcohol levels in the wine, which, as my dad said, can kind of mask terroir, and it makes wines taste more similar or even the same at some point when you have all that. So in California, I mean, we have different varieties, but I mean, we make 6 different Zinfandels, all from Dry Creek Valley. Same variety, planted within a few miles of each other. And you'll open one and it's, perfumed and elegant and subtle. And, you look at the soil and it's a lot, more kind of sandier, chalkier soil. And then you go on the mountain and we have really red soil, and that clay and, kind of more iron in the soil makes for a deeper, darker flavor in the Zin. And so the soil, and then every growing season being different. A cool year, your sugar levels won't get as high. You might have more acidity in the grapes to start with. For picking, we base our picking decisions on a balance. It's the grapes are ripening, the sugar's going up, the acid is slowly dropping out, and going out and tasting and testing and making that decision can change every year, and the numbers of chemistry can be slightly different. But we're picking for the year, basically. So if we think, the grapes are tasting ready to go and the weather's looking good, we might let them hang for another day or two. But
yeah, it's not, as Jamie said, it's balance. And, obviously that is a very subjective and changeable number, and so we taste test. I tell people that if you don't appreciate and understand the basics of the science of fermentation in wine, you're probably not going to consistently make good wine. The difference for us is that we analyze, we look at the numbers, we do the tests to back up what we smell, taste, in our experience, whereas the bigger wineries, they use the numbers to dictate how they make the wine. So, harvest, people think of harvest as, nice and neat, but it's really not, because, as Jamie said, every year is different. It may be hot in early season. It may be cooler later, and it's a juggling act. So it's that's the art of winemaking for a smaller winery is making the decision when the grapes are at their what's the word I'm looking for? Jamie, help me out here. Optimum, I guess. Yeah. And then hope you can pick from that, and hope you have tanks. I mean, it's a logistical juggling act also, because you only have so many. We hand harvest all our fruit. You only have so many pickers. Jamie only has so many tanks. There's only so many hours in a day. So it's a real juggling act, and we hope that the harvest. It typically starts around Labor Day, beginning of September. We hope it goes to the middle of October, so we have 6 weeks to do this. Some years we don't. Some years we have to get it in a little over 3 weeks, which is a lot of pressure on Jamie and his crew.
So where do you get all that? Where do you get all that labor? I mean, you've got a short window of where you need to do a lot of picking. You're doing it all by hand. Where do you?
Yeah, the one thing that's the downside of grape growing around here, which is also the upside at harvest, is it's very labor intensive. I mean, everything we do, from pruning to suckering to, weed eating, is done by humans. Most of our crews are Mexican immigrants. So we have a large full-time, we don't have to bring in a lot of, migrants, so to speak, although there's very few of those left. The other thing that grapes, because the value of the fruit is such that, and it's hard work, and I would drop dead if I tried to do it to make a living, but harvesters make good money. I mean, typically for us, we start at first light. We generally, and some days we can go a little bit longer because when it's cool, but we typically don't harvest past noon because we don't want the grapes to be warm. So the pickers will, pick 5-6 hours and make anywhere from $35 to up to $50 an hour. So my point there is that attract people that are doing other stuff will actually take a couple of weeks off, if they're landscaping or whatever, and harvest, because they can make in a few weeks make some pretty good money. So knock on wood, it's we've been fortunate to be able to have enough people to get the grapes picked more or less when we want. Some years, it's tough when everyone wants to get the grapes picked at the same time. It is a finite pool of folks who harvest.
So a couple of weeks ago, I had a guest on the show. They focus a lot on the soil. They actually have a company that takes in scraps from the area here and then turns it into compost, and then they kind of lay that out for different farmers, different organizations. So, and then microbes have been in the news a lot lately. Everybody's talking about gut health and microbes and gut biome and all that stuff. So how does that relate to your soil and your grapes and what you're growing? I know, Jamie, you kind of mentioned the sandy soil and the clay soil in the two different locations, but I guess how does that enhance or hurt what you're trying to do from a winemaking standpoint, I guess?
Well, I mean, on all our vineyards, it is about taking care of the soil, cover cropping. We don't make our own compost, but we're getting compost from a local company and applying it. I mean, not quite annually on all the blocks, but
pretty much annually. Yeah, I mean, one of the things, I think it's one of the good things that's happened in my 50 years doing this is the respect and appreciation of soil health and what the soil. So as Jamie said, we cover crop annually, which cover crops are planted for a variety of reasons, for erosion control, to keep the soil in place during the winter when we get our heavy rains. but it also adds to soil structure. I do minimal tilling, but because we don't irrigate our vineyards, they're what's referred to as dry farms, meaning our vines have to get through the growing season with the water that's in the soil from the winter rains, and the organic matter and the compost. I mean, I've found that compost holds so much water, it allows you to, if you do irrigate, to irrigate less. But in my case, it allows me to not irrigate, because every ton of compost applied, I forget the number, but it holds an incredible amount of water. And then the compost also, and the cover crop, which when it's lightly tilled in, breaks down and gives you more organic matter. It provides an environment for all the good microbes that provide. You know, my soil on Bradford, it's red because it's pretty old. It was formed around when the dinosaurs went extinct, 60 some odd million years ago, and then was raised, so it's been weathered for all that time. So there's very little nutrients left in it, except for iron, aluminum, and so adding the compost and getting more organic matter allows the various fungi and bacteria, all this good stuff that we're just learning about now, to provide for healthier vines. So I've seen a change since I started, when I replanted, not quite 20 years ago. I amended the soil with a lot of compost and lime and gypsum, because I realized that though we don't think of grapes, and they don't need a lot of nutrients relative to, say, corn or soybeans, because they're deeper rooted, they mine the soil deeper, and they will deplete the soil. So you can't just take, you've got to give back, but it's money well spent. I don't know. Well, fertilizer prices have in the last decade have almost quadrupled. I don't add chemical fertilizers, but the fertilizer value and the compost I put on every year, I'm actually getting is cheaper than if I bought the chemical for. So it's a good investment, I guess, is what I'm rambling. And it's definitely. And we're not certified organic. We probably could be, but for me, pretty transparent about our practices. But I don't need a third party to certify that I'm groovy, I guess. Plus, when people think organic, they think it's no sprays, and in fact, what organic is that when you have problems, diseases, which every vineyard has some issues. The materials you put on materials, they just have to be, quote, organic, which is they have to be naturally derived rather than manufactured. But sulfur is sulfur, whether it's mined or from a byproduct of oil refining, and it does the same thing. But one thing I'll say that I do agree with the main principle of organic and then biodynamic, which is sort of organic on steroids, is that healthy soil is what creates the conditions for healthy vines, and that's certainly, without a doubt, to me, a truism.
Well, healthy soil means healthy vines, means healthy grapes, and then that goes into your wine, and then that goes into, what everybody's drinking.
So, it ain't rocket science, as they say.
Well, I mean, it's a pretty basic comment, but a lot of people don't quite get the connection between soil and what they're eating. So well, you just kind of answered my next question was about U.S. farming methods, fertilizers, watering. You kind of covered all that as far as how you're handling your farms there. So let me go on to the next question I had was, winemaking is a very competitive business. So, I mean, you're kind of in California, you've got Napa, Sonoma, you're in Dry Creek, which is part of Sonoma. So besides zero manipulation, what what sets your winery apart from all those competitors that are out there? I mean, obviously you're doing well. You've been in business for 30 plus years, and people like me continue to buy your wine year after year. So what sets you guys apart, I guess?
Well, I mean, it's the people, the small family winery in operation. And, we've had Jan, our office manager, has been on board for 25 years. And, so we've been around a lot longer than a lot of wineries. So there's a little bit of the longevity factor, because when we moved here to Dry Creek Valley, there were 10 wineries in Dry Creek Valley, and now I think there's 70 odd, 80 wineries.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, the competition has definitely increased. And me growing up, there's the community of wineries, and it didn't always feel like competition, but it definitely is. I mean, it's we're not just competing against wineries too; it's against beer and spirits and other beverages and for attention of restaurants and so our zero manipulation philosophy, the fact that we make so many varieties can be not a weakness but a challenge, but it also is something that people really enjoy. So it's that's part of it. There's a lot of wineries that make just Pinot Noir and Chardonnay, or Cabernet and Sauvignon Blanc, and we've had winemaker friends argue that it's not possible for us to do as many varieties as we do well, but I think our philosophy of keeping it simple and honest and not trying to make the same wine every year, but still trying to make it the best we can every year. We can make all the wines well and taste good, and some years will be stellar, and some years will be, the standard.
Okay. So what?
Yeah, no, it's that's the challenge, Ken, is how to, in a world sort of noise, given the number of wineries, not just from California, but I used to call going back to the Midwest doing wine missionary work, because not as many Americans, drank wine. Now more do, but we're also competing with, Italian, French, Spanish, Argentinian, New Zealand. I mean, you just fill in the blank. So the production part isn't competitive for the most part. I mean, we're very collegial, and I have friends around the world who, we talk about, certain, the production part of things and the business. The competitiveness is out in the marketplace. I mean, the number of wineries has increased incredibly, the number of distributors, the folks that we have to go through to sell in states outside of California, has decreased. So it's become this, bottleneck or hourglass where getting through the middle has gotten tougher. So we're blessed that, given the connections we've made over the, 30 plus years, we have a nice following. And we sell, well over half direct, which is, it's kept us in business, frankly. And we're in roughly 10 states outside of California. I'd like to get a tiny bit more distribution, but that's really tough. And you don't make the same margin because you throw in that other middleman to. So it's it's only gotten more difficult in my course of my time in the business, and I don't see it getting any easier anytime soon.
We need more Barb Drady's out there promoting your.
Yeah, no, that's what we need, people. And of course, we're in a transition from the kind of the old gatekeepers of Parker and Spectator and such, and people are bemoaning the fact that wine writing isn't what it once was, and how do people get their information? And so, I mean, at the end of the day, I think that good wine isn't going away. I mean, a good bottle of wine and a good meal is still, I think, one of life's great pleasures. But hopefully, I'm not whistling past the graveyard here.
Yeah, I don't think. Yeah, I don't think you are, because I mean, again, there's a lot of it's newer. People are paying a lot more attention to the food they're eating, and like I kind of said that in the blue zones, these Centurions are living and they're having, they're eating healthy meals, but they're also drinking wine with their meals as well. So that seems to be
and in moderation.
In moderation,
right. Yeah, and wine, I don't promote it as a health beverage, but in fact, in small amounts with food, I do believe. I mean, and I won't go in or try to promote the physical benefits, but if nothing else, I mean, I think again, having a little bit of wine with a meal and family and friends, it promotes a well-being that then translates into a quality of life, which everyone speaks about. But here in this country, where we just need to slow down and enjoy things, right? I mean, it's it's simple, but it's simple yet profound.
Yes.
How's that?
Yeah, eating together is good. You get community, you get social interaction. You're having a glass of wine, having a good meal. I mean, that's all. Yeah, I mean, more people need to do that. I mean, that's kind of one of the reasons I'm doing this podcast, to talk about it. So, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, when you talk about health and longevity, I mean, I've said for many decades, I mean, you can't change your genetics,
right.
So that's the hand you're dealt there. But what you can affect, the two things, the biggest killers of Americans is bad diet and stress. I mean, and one would hope that you can control a lot of those two factors.
Yeah, and there's even, I'm going to put this up on my website, but there's a study done by the National Library of Medicine that actually talked about wine and its benefits for like heart health, cholesterol, blood pressure, and even cognitive benefits. Again, having a glass of wine with dinner, not over-consuming anything. So.
Yeah, well, that's and some number of years ago, well, because I was middle-aged then and not old, but I had my commercial truck driver's license. I gave up driving trucks many decades ago, but I kept it because I drove the water tender for the fire department, and you needed a commercial license. And the doctor said, he goes, well, for a middle-aged, somewhat overweight guy, you're not, you're in pretty good health. He goes, but your cholesterol is right there on the borderline, and we have all these great medications. And I said, Doc, I don't want to sound like a total hick, but I don't trust those damn pharmaceutical companies, and I'll drink my prescription a couple glasses a night, thank you. So that didn't go over well with the doc, but I do believe that diet and a little bit of wine can not cure things, but it can definitely provide you with a better health. Yeah.
So you kind of talked about 50% of your customers are direct, which I'm one of those customers. So any positive experiences? I mean, dealing with those customers, things that, for example, I mean, you both had experiences overseas before you got into winemaking in Australia. I think, Fred, you mentioned New Zealand and something I saw online. So I'm just, any stories you can kind of share where you've made a difference in people's lives. When I visited your store, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago, and somebody waited on me. The gentleman was from Australia. He was there for, I don't remember if the summer or the year or whatever. So obviously you've got people coming through there as well that you're influencing. So I guess any thoughts there?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely one of the motivating, things that keeps keeps the business exciting and rewarding and fulfilling is being able to connect with people that come here and on travels. I mean, my dad's gone to the UK a couple times, and seeing and hearing stories from people. And then my travels to Australia and New Zealand was kind of where I actually, fell in love with winemaking, because I grew up with it, but it wasn't always. It was kind of, that's what Dad does. And then as a 19-year-old, wanting to see the world, and then working with family winemakers there and seeing it from from just a step back or a different point of view, and the community that they locally had, and then relating it to the global community. So, yeah, I mean, you visited us, 15 years ago first, and then, the hearing that it's at your daughter's wedding, and I just had a couple stop by 4 days ago that had our wine at their wedding in 2011 as well, and it's they hadn't been here in 5 years, and they just were out on a whim because their son turned 21, and so there's a community in each winery and with all of our customers and the global wine community. It
is. I mean, we don't, I joke that we're not curing cancer by making and selling wine, but if we're bringing a little bit of happiness to people and again, in moderation, making their lives better, I mean, that's, could get a lot worse. And this was our best customer, I tell people, is an 80-year-old farmer in eastern Iowa who, he has a big family, and he, I'm sure, shares it because no way he could drink. But I think last year he bought, 85 cases or something. He always buys it 9 cases at a time. And anyhow, we talk when he calls. If I answer, we talk about farming, what's going on, and. This was we're in the old place, so probably 25 years ago, and it was one of those super long days that Jamie and I used to have back in our tiny little Red Barn winery. And I had the phone on the forklift, and I was hustling around trying to, dump the I forget what I was doing, but the phone rang, and I thought it might have been my wife, and I answered it. And it was a gentleman who said, geez, I'm shocked I got a human being. I know it's late at night, and I was going to leave a message. I'm an emergency room doctor in like Louisville, Kentucky or something, and he said I just got off a really long day, and wife had a nice meal, and I opened up a bottle of your wine. I just wanted to tell you, how much I loved it, and thank you for what you're doing. So, that sounds a little corny, but. Over the years, I mean, we've had customers who bought our wine since we started, and you as Jamie said, you become in a tiny way part of their lives, and and you hear when people sadly have strokes or their wife died. I mean, it's that's how connected you become to the people who appreciate your wine.
Very nice. So what would you say over the last 30 years your proudest accomplishment was? I always get a pause for this one.
Single, yeah, I mean, I can do from a production standpoint and surviving some harvests where it was 57 days in a row without a single day off or a day less than 8 hours. Let me marinate for a minute, Dad.
Yeah, no, I guess twofold. One is my proudest that I was able to adapt in my vineyard and go from a more conventional approach to farming to a more soil-based, and the results have been, besides costing me less to farm because I'm not paying for power to irrigate, I'm not I keep the inputs down. So that makes me proud that I, even at an advanced age, I'm doing things better. And then to second what Jamie said is that, I may not be that bright, but I'm really stubborn. And we've stuck to our guns. We've never made wine for the critics. We've always made honest wines that we think are the best reflection. And, that's not always how, probably hasn't rewarded us financially as much as some other wineries. But at the end of the day, I'm proud that we are still here doing what we do, doing it better, I think, every year. And the job that we have, given the noise out there, is to find ways to connect to people who are going to appreciate what we do. Because at the end of the day, that's what keeps you in business, right? I mean, we make what we like, what we think are the best wines, but until someone agrees with us and buys our wine, it's just hot air.
Okay. All right, so the last thing we always have on the show here is the recipe, which I know you emailed me in advance. So you, what I ask everybody to do is create something or talk about something that's under $25. Can make in less than 30 minutes, has a few ingredients. The whole idea is kind of to, Fred, what you were saying earlier, get people to eat at home more, eat as a family, do a little bit less, packaged foods or drive-throughs or whatever. So that's kind of the whole reason we close with this. So maybe just talk, you don't have to read the ingredients, but maybe just talk about the recipe that you provide.
Yeah, when you propose that, and both, Jamie grew up around, cooking and does most of his, most if not all the cooking at his house. And I was fortunate enough to connect with a pretty incredible cook who, before she opened her bakery, worked at Chez Panisse restaurant in Berkeley. But because of her bakery hours, I actually cooked more than she did, and she taught me techniques. But my repertoire is very simple. And it's, simple sautés and stir fries. And to your point, I mean, I don't want to spend hours in the kitchen. It's sort of ironic to me as Americans got into, these big homes with these kitchens with every damn thing under the sun, and yet they're never used because they don't cook at home. To keep it so that it doesn't take a long time. And it's kind of analogous to our wines, which is if you have really great ingredients, treat them with respect, keep it simple, and that's what you're eating, is what Mother Nature gives you. So this chicken cacciatore recipe is something, and as Jamie pointed out, it certainly could be prepared in under 30 minutes. It's nice if you can let it simmer a little longer, because that's where the flavors develop. And but this is something that I would do often, just because it's inexpensive. And again, I love braised things that the flavors infused. So
some savory, onion, garlic. And then the good acid and sweetness from tomato and a little carrot. And I'll make it, sometimes with just whatever other veggies I have on hand. Like if I don't happen to have carrots, which is kind of rare because you keep them around for, soup and making stock. But, zucchini or something else in the mix, it's the mix of fresh tomato and some tomato paste to thicken it, and chicken thighs are good and flavorful and cheaper, but if there's a good deal on breasts, I'll do chicken breasts as well. So I probably cook a tomatoey chicken, and sometimes I'll do like a similar thing with pork chops if they're a good deal, but that's a staple every couple weeks or so.
And it's very wine friendly, especially with Zinfandel.
Sangiovese.
Is that what you put down?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and yeah, it goes well with Sangiovese, but Zin, you can drink it while you're preparing it, drink it with
Well, that's
it.
what I was
and,
kind of thinking. If you want it to simmer for a while, just have a glass of wine while it's simmering. It's going to smell good. Have a glass of wine.
Yeah, no, the
Yeah.
aromas of cooking aromas to me are what, my mom's side of my family is Italian, and going to my grandparents in San Francisco, the Italian I mean, my dad's mom, Annie, was a great cook too, but it wasn't quite as aromatic and full of garlic and herbs as Nikki and Dee Dee's dishes, and going into their kitchen and those, So I think smell is one of those things that really emotionally triggering, and so. But I
No,
digress.
I agree. And I don't know. I mean, this, I guess kind of the whole purpose of the podcast, in addition, I'm trying to raise some money here, but is to kind of talk about it. You got to focus on the ingredients. I mean, it's kind of your ingredients are the soil. It helps the vines. It helps the grapes. Goes into your great wine. Same thing with the food. You got to have good ingredients. You don't need to have 50 ingredients, but if you have a few good ingredients,
Yeah.
you're going to make a good meal.
More and more Americans. I mean, gardening during COVID seemed to really take off, and hopefully that continues. My wife is she's a fanatical gardener and loves watching garden shows, and her favorite lately is I can't think of the name of it, but it's English, and how in England and probably other parts of Europe they have their allotments where the town gives people, basically gives them land to grow their gardens, and it's like, it's not only great for their health and, but to me, and I got out of vegetable gardening and now for a while, and now besides loving the food you grow, it's so relaxing and so connecting to nature. So it's one of those things where more people should do it, frankly.
I agree. Yeah, I'm actually trying to, for this project in East Cleveland here, we're trying to work. There's an organization, and they actually go into schools now. They help the kids plant a garden, they grow it, and then they make something with what they've grown. So they're teaching kids at a young age kind of because I think it's kind of lost in society. You can just go to the corner store and pick up,
Yeah, I mean, people don't realize that, they can't grow a damn radish. I mean, this is, it's back to the basics, but it is, to get people reconnected to nature, let's start there with your food, and, it's a good thing, certainly, to support, Ken.
All right, well, thank you both for taking time out of your day here to be on the podcast. Where can we find you? Are you guys on social media? I know you have a website, Peterson Winery. Any other locations we can find you, social media-wise?
Yeah, we have an Instagram page and Facebook and a neglected Twitter account, but it's there. And we did a fun interview last month on that.
Did you?
But, those are the three main online places to find us.
Yeah, we're working on, again, doing a better job of outreach because, at the end of the day, that's what we need to do. I mean, as getting fewer people coming to the winery, as it's gotten more expensive for people to visit out here, it's we don't see quite as many people, which is really the best way to connect to folks. So we need to do more outreach, and I just got back late Saturday. I was in Minnesota and Iowa for 11 days, doing a little road trip. That's part of what, the little bit of work at the winery I do is the sales and traveling part. So I get to focus on the vineyard. That's immediately gratifying, but selling is more of a challenge. But I joke that if your name's on the bottle and you're not dead, people still, they want to talk to you. And so that's what I'm doing.
Well, thank you both for being on the show. Please subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. Leave your comments. And thank you both for being here today. Have a great rest of your day.
Well, thank you, Ken. Yeah, and one of these days, hopefully your travels will take you back out here, and or I'll see you in Cleveland. We've sold a little bit of wine there. Our distributor now is kind of not really doing much, but I'm hopeful. We have a small but decent distributor in Columbus and down in Cincinnati, so hoping that we can get a little more presence up in Cleveland. And, we do, as you know, sell wine direct to folks there, so that's a good thing as well. So thank you, Ken, and yes, promoting healthy food and making a little bit of wine part of it. Thank you so much for including us in your podcast.